The chandeliers inside the Ritz-Carlton glittered like diamonds melting over champagne. Cameras flashed, laughter echoed, and Daniel Reed, the golden CEO of Reed Technologies, walked down the marble staircase with a woman on his arm. Her name was Ava Monroe, 26, tall, dazzling, and dangerous. He smiled at her like a man in love, not realizing 1,000 lenses were capturing his betrayal in real time. At that exact moment, a black Mercedes stopped outside. Emily Carter Reed stepped out slowly, one hand on her swollen belly. Her soft silver gown shimmered under the city lights. 32 years old, 7 months pregnant with twins, she still carried herself with quiet elegance. She'd come because Daniel told her the gala was their night. To celebrate how far we've come, Em. Those were his exact words. Inside the ballroom, the host announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, our visionary CEO and his new director of public relations, Miss K. Ava Monroe." The crowd applauded. Flashbulbs went wild. Daniel leaned in and kissed Ava's cheek, long enough for it to make tomorrow's front page. Emily froze at the doorway. Her breath caught. The champagne flute she'd been handed trembled in her grasp until it shattered. People turned. Conversations halted. And just like that, the woman who helped build Reed Technologies became the evening's ghost. Standing in her own husband's shadow, Daniel's eyes flickered toward her, panic flashing for half a second before his PR-trained smile returned. Ava looked confused, then victorious. The cameras didn't miss the pregnant woman in the doorway, nor the CEO pretending she wasn't there. Emily's fingers clenched around her clutch. Every heartbeat echoed louder than the orchestra. She took one slow breath, her mind replaying every late night she'd stayed up helping Daniel polish his investor pitches, every sacrifice she made so he could shine. Her diamond wedding ring glinted beneath the ballroom lights, a reminder of vows already broken. A journalist whispered, "Isn't that his wife?" Another replied, "No way. He said she stepped down to focus on family." Laughter, cruel, soft, venomous, spread like perfume. Emily didn't cry. Not yet. She turned, walked out past the marble pillars and pressed her back against the cold wall of the hotel's corridor. Outside, Manhattan glittered, sharp, merciless, alive. She pulled out her iPhone, ready to call Daniel to ask why. But the screen lit up first. Breaking news. CEO Daniel Reed debuts new flame at fundraising gala. Her vision blurred. She could hear the crowd cheering from inside, Daniel's laughter rising above it all. Then her phone buzzed, his name flashing on the screen. She stared at it. 1 ring, 2, 3. She didn't answer. She simply whispered, "You burned us, Daniel." And as the music swelled behind those golden doors, she turned toward the elevator, hand resting protectively on her belly, her eyes filled not with tears, but fire. Her silence tonight will destroy him tomorrow. 2 days before the gala, Emily sat alone in the corner office she once shared with Daniel. The skyline of Manhattan shimmered beyond the glass, but the reflection staring back at her looked nothing like the woman who helped build this empire. Her hair was pulled into a tired bun, her eyes swollen from long nights working on presentations that Daniel would deliver the next morning as his own. It hadn't always been this way. 5 years ago, Reed Technologies was nothing but a name scribbled on a napkin inside a Starbucks. Emily was the one who believed first. She pawned her Tiffany engagement ring to pay the first 3 software engineers when the company's seed funding failed to close. Daniel promised he'd buy her a bigger one when we make it. They made it, but the bigger ring never came. When investors asked about the company's direction, Emily crafted the financial models on her MacBook Pro late at night, while Daniel practiced his smile in the mirror. He loved the spotlight. She loved watching him succeed. But every press article called him a self-made genius and never once mentioned the woman beside him. The first time she realized how invisible she'd become was during an investor dinner at the River Cafe. A journalist asked Daniel, "Who's your financial brain?" Daniel chuckled, swirling his wine. "We have a strong team," he said. Emily, sitting 2 seats away, smiled politely while hiding her trembling hands beneath the tablecloth. Her mother once warned her, "Men forget who built their thrones once they sit too high." Emily brushed it off back then. Now the words echoed. That morning after the gala, her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. News alerts, gossip blogs, colleagues sending sympathetic texts. "Are you okay? Is it true?" She turned the phone face down. Then she noticed something chilling on her desk, a a letter marked confidential. Inside was a legal draft titled Spousal Equity Transfer Agreement. Her name was printed in bold at the top. The signature looked like hers, but she never signed it. Her chest tightened. Daniel had forged her consent to remove her from the company's ownership. Emily called him. He didn't pick up. Instead, a message appeared. "Let's talk after this blows over. Don't do anything stupid, Em, for the babies." She stared at the text until her tears blurred the words. For the babies. That's what he reduced her to. Leverage. Her assistant knocked gently. "Mrs. Reed, Mr. Blackwell left this for you." It was a note from Marcus Blackwell, the company's biggest investor. The handwriting was precise, elegant. "You built something worth protecting. Don't let someone steal it under your silence." That was the first time anyone acknowledged her contribution in years. Emily looked around the office, the framed magazine covers with Daniel's face, the award plaques, the skyline that once symbolized success. Everything she'd sacrificed for stood before her, yet none of it carried her name. She opened her laptop, scrolling through old photos. Her and Daniel in their tiny apartment, eating takeout, laughing over spreadsheets. For a brief second, she wanted to believe it wasn't all a lie. But then she remembered the kiss, Ava's smile, Daniel's hand resting on another woman's waist. Her belly tightened, the twins shifting inside her as if sensing her pain. She whispered, "Don't worry, babies. Mommy's got you now." Outside, the winter sun dipped behind the skyscrapers, turning the windows gold, the same color as betrayal. Emily shut her laptop, picked up her coat, and walked out of Reed Technologies. The receptionist looked up nervously, but she didn't say a word. Behind her, the elevator doors closed with a soft chime. The woman who built an empire had just decided to destroy it. The next morning, the headlines hit like a hammer. Reed Technologies confirms leadership shift. CEO Daniel Reed restructures for family balance. Beneath it, a photo of Daniel smiling with Ava, holding hands in front of the company's new AI prototype. The caption read, "Wife steps down to focus on motherhood." Emily dropped her iPhone. The screen cracked when it hit the hardwood. She stared at the article, each sentence slicing deeper. She hadn't stepped down. She hadn't spoken to any journalist. Yet there it was, her silence rewritten into submission. Across town, Daniel sat in a glass conference room overlooking Park Avenue, rehearsing lines for a TV interview. "We're evolving as a brand," he told his PR team. "The public loves a redemption story, a man balancing business and love." He adjusted his tie, smirking. "Make sure Emily looks graceful in this. A soft victim sells better." Meanwhile, Emily's lawyer friend, Julia, rushed to her apartment. "Em, I checked court records. There's a divorce petition already filed. Your signature's on it." Emily's world tilted. "That's impossible," she whispered. Julia slid over a printed copy. The handwriting looked like hers, every curve, every slant. Daniel had used a digital forgery of her signature. The filing date? 2 weeks ago. Right before the gala. Her hands shook. She thought of all the times Daniel had said, "You don't need to worry about paperwork, babe. I'll handle it." He wasn't handling it. He was erasing her. That afternoon, she went to Reed Technologies, hoping to confront him. Security stopped her in the lobby. "Mrs. Reed, we're instructed not to let you upstairs." Her voice cracked. "This is my company." The guard avoided her gaze. "Not according to corporate registry, ma'am." Inside the elevator, Daniel was finishing another call with an investor. "She's emotional," he said smoothly. "You know how pregnancy hormones are. She'll come around once the twins are born." He laughed. The investors laughed with him. By evening, financial blogs had picked up the story. Reed's brave CEO redefines modern marriage. Daniel's stock price climbed 8% in a single day. He toasted champagne with Ava at the Plaza Hotel, his wrist flashing a silver Rolex. Meanwhile, Emily sat in her small apartment, surrounded by boxes of baby clothes and unopened legal letters. The TV played Daniel's interview. He said, "My wife's taken time off. She's the heart behind everything I do." Emily stared at the screen. Her hands curled into fists. That smile, that tone, the same one he used when lying to investors. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "He's not just lying to you. He's lying to the market. Check the Q4 report." She hesitated. Could it be Marcus Blackwell? She opened the link. The report showed inflated earnings, falsified R&D data. The same kind of corporate fraud she used to warn Daniel about. The company was a bubble, and he was using her forged signature to validate it. Her stomach tightened. The baby kicked. Emily whispered, "He's using our names to lie." Tears blurred her vision, but then something inside her shifted. Calm, cold clarity. She began copying documents, screenshots, every falsified statement she could find from her old laptop. If Daniel wanted a redemption story, she'd give him one. But not the kind that ends in applause. As the city lights flickered outside her window, Emily uploaded the files to a secure drive and whispered, "Let's see how he handles truth." By morning, Daniel Reed's perfect empire would start to crack. The following Friday, the Reed Technologies PR team gathered for the company's biggest investor dinner of the quarter. It was held at the River Cafe, overlooking the glowing Brooklyn Bridge. The skyline sparkled, music played softly, and everyone whispered about how CEO Daniel Reed is living the dream. He arrived fashionably late, wearing a tailored black suit, his Rolex glinting beneath the chandeliers. But it wasn't his suit that caught the room's attention. It was Ava Monroe on his arm. She wore a silk red gown that clung like fire, laughing too loudly, touching his shoulder as though she already owned him. The photographers snapped eagerly. Daniel smiled wider. He wanted the world to see. Ava whispered, "They love us." Daniel's jaw tightened. "They love the image, don't forget that." Across the bridge, in a quiet apartment in Midtown, Emily sat in bed surrounded by medical papers. Her doctor had warned her about high blood pressure and stress. "You need calm, Mrs. Reed," he said gently. "Your twins depend on it." She nodded but said nothing. Calm didn't exist anymore. Her phone buzzed with a message from a former assistant. "You should see this live stream." Emily clicked the link. On her screen appeared Daniel and Ava, standing before a banner that read, "Innovation through Passion." He was introducing her, Ava Monroe, new VP of Public Relations. The crowd cheered. Emily's heart stuttered. VP of PR? That was her title 6 months ago. Daniel's voice filled the speakers. "Ava has brought fresh energy to our company. She's the kind of visionary Reed Technologies needs to move forward." Move forward. The words echoed like a blade twisting. Emily muted the video, but she couldn't look away. Ava looked radiant under the stage lights, the kind of glow Emily once had when Daniel first believed in her. The room applauded. He kissed Ava's cheek again, this time slower, deliberate. Back at the restaurant, Ava leaned in and whispered, "Was that too much?" Daniel smirked. "Perfect. Let them talk." He loved controlling the narrative. He thought if he made the scandal public, it would look like love, not betrayal. Later that night, while reporters flooded social media, Daniel's phone buzzed with a call from Emily, wife. Ava noticed. "You're not going to answer that, are you?" He shrugged, silenced the call, and said coldly, "She'll get the message." Emily sat on her couch, the phone still in her hand, hearing only the dial tone. Her breath shook. On the TV behind her, the broadcast replayed Daniel and Ava's kiss, looping it like a victory. Her vision blurred. A stabbing pain hit her side, a contraction, sudden and sharp. She gasped, clutching her belly. One of the babies kicked violently. She reached for her phone again, but dropped it to the floor, her voice trembling. "Please, not now." Across town, the dinner continued. Daniel raised a glass to new beginnings. The investors applauded. Ava smiled, her fingers brushing his hand, but her eyes darted toward the city skyline, where distant sirens wailed. At that same moment, Emily collapsed to the floor, struggling to breathe. The screen of her fallen iPhone still glowed with Daniel's name. The sirens grew louder. Two worlds, one built on lies, one built on love, were about to collide in the cruelest way. Tonight, the mistress celebrated. The wife fought to stay alive. The night Emily was rushed to Lenox Hill Hospital, the city outside glowed indifferent, Manhattan's skyline shining while her world dimmed. The paramedics moved quickly, voices sharp and echoing. "Blood pressure's unstable. She's 7 months with twins. We're losing one heartbeat." Emily drifted in and out of consciousness. The sound of sirens mixed with memories. Daniel's laugh at the gala, Ava's red dress, and the shattered glass in her trembling hand. When she opened her eyes, fluorescent lights blinded her. The smell of antiseptic burned her throat. "Where am I?" she whispered. A nurse touched her arm gently. "Lenox Hill. You're safe now, Mrs. Reed. One baby's still strong, but you need rest." One baby. Her breath caught. Tears blurred her vision. Her hand instinctively covered her belly, and the silence between heartbeats was the loudest sound she'd ever heard. Across town, Daniel's phone buzzed during a post-dinner interview at the Plaza Hotel. Your wife's in the hospital, his assistant whispered. He froze. Cameras still flashing. He forced a smile. Excuse me, I'll handle this privately. Outside, under the marble archway, he called her number. It rang once, twice, then voicemail. Emily, it's me. I heard about... I'm on my way. Please pick up. She didn't answer. He called again. Again. Each ring bounced off the cold hospital walls where Emily sat motionless, staring at the empty crib beside her bed. Her nurse entered softly. Mr. Reed's been calling all night. Should I? No, Emily said flatly. Let him wonder what silence sounds like. Daniel paced outside the plaza, rage simmering beneath his polished facade. She's doing this for attention, he hissed to Ava, who waited inside their black car. Ava shifted uncomfortably. Daniel, she just lost a baby. He snapped. Don't make this about her. She knew the risks. Stress isn't my fault. Inside the hospital, Emily's doctor explained that she needed to avoid emotional strain. You're lucky one baby survived, he said gently. You need calm, Mrs. Reed, and stability. Calm, stability. Words Daniel never gave her. At dawn, her phone buzzed again, his name glowing across the cracked screen. She watched it until the ringing stopped, then turned the phone face down. Next to it lay a folded card from Marcus Blackwell, the investor she barely knew personally. It read, You don't owe him an answer. You owe yourself peace. Daniel, meanwhile, faced his first public backlash. Gossip blogs picked up photos of him leaving the plaza at 3 a.m. with Ava while his wife was still hospitalized. The comments were vicious, heartless. Monster CEO. He slammed his phone onto the table. They'll forget by Monday, he muttered. But this time, the world didn't forget. Investors began questioning his judgment. Ava asked, Should we visit her? Make it look sympathetic? Daniel sneered. She'll come crawling back once she realizes she needs my money. But Emily didn't crawl. She rose. By Sunday morning, she checked out of the hospital early, ignoring his calls. Her driver pulled up outside a penthouse on Park Avenue, Marcus's property. He stood waiting at the door, coat draped over his arm. You shouldn't be alone, he said simply. Emily hesitated, clutching her belly. Why are you helping me? Because, Marcus replied, eyes steady, seen what happens when good people stay quiet. She stepped inside, the door closing softly behind her. For the first time in months, she didn't feel trapped. Outside, Daniel's latest call went straight to voicemail, and somewhere in that silence, his empire began to crumble. Snow fell softly over Park Avenue when Marcus Blackwell opened the door to his penthouse. The light from the fireplace reflected off glass walls, revealing a man who looked more like solitude than power. Tall, composed, dressed in a navy cashmere coat, Marcus was the kind of billionaire who didn't need to speak loudly to command a room. Emily stepped inside, trembling slightly. She looked fragile yet fierce, a woman who had survived betrayal, grief, and near death in a single week. Her coat hung loosely over her shoulders, and she cradled her belly with protective instinct. You didn't have to come here yourself, she said softly. Marcus replied, You wouldn't have accepted help any other way. He guided her to a long sofa overlooking the Manhattan skyline. On the coffee table sat a cup of herbal tea, still steaming. Next to it, a neatly folded envelope stamped with the Reed Technologies logo. Emily frowned. What is that? Evidence, Marcus said. I've been watching Daniel for a while. He poured her tea, his movements calm, precise. He's been moving investor funds through a dummy corporation. You didn't sign off on it, but your name is on the documents. Her hands froze. He forged me again? Marcus nodded. That's why I reached out. You're about to take the fall for something you didn't do. Emily sank into the sofa, tears filling her eyes. He ruined me, Marcus. I lost a baby, my company, my reputation. Marcus interrupted gently. You haven't lost yourself. That's the one thing he couldn't touch. For a long moment, the only sound was the fire crackling. Emily stared into the flames, remembering the warmth that used to mean safety. Why are you helping me? She asked again. Marcus looked at her for a moment, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. Because I've seen men like Daniel before. They think they own everything, even people. I invest in companies, Mrs. Reed, but I don't invest in cowards. She let out a shaky breath, clutching her cup. What am I supposed to do now? First, he said, you rest. Then we clean up his mess. He stood, walking toward the window. Below, the snowflakes danced in the golden light of the traffic. You know, he added quietly, when I first met you at that investor meeting last year, I thought you were the CEO. You spoke like someone who built everything herself. Emily managed a faint smile. I did. Marcus turned back, slipping his hands into his pockets. Then it's time the world remembers that. Later that night, she wandered through the penthouse, unable to sleep. Every corner felt foreign yet safe. The scent of cedar, the distant hum of the city. On a desk by the window, she saw a stack of papers, legal documents bearing Daniel's forged signatures, photos, transaction logs, everything Marcus had collected quietly, waiting for this moment. Emily's breath caught. You kept all this? I told you, Marcus said from behind her. I've been watching, and I don't let injustice slide. For the first time in months, she didn't feel alone. She looked at him, really looked. The way he spoke without judgment, the way his presence steadied the air. He noticed her gaze and said quietly, You don't owe me anything. Just promise me you'll fight back. Emily nodded, wiping away a tear. I will. Outside, the snow kept falling, covering the city in silence. Somewhere below, Daniel Reed was giving another TV interview, pretending his world was still perfect. He didn't know it yet, but his greatest investor had just switched sides. And this time, the woman he betrayed had someone powerful on her side. 11 months earlier, Reed Technologies was on the verge of collapse. Investors were fleeing, the product launch had failed, and the company's servers had been hacked days before a $50 million deal. Daniel panicked. He shouted at staff, blamed everyone, and drank through meetings. Emily, though 7 weeks pregnant and hiding it, was the one pulling all-nighters on her MacBook Pro, reworking numbers, crafting investor pitches, rewriting press statements. It was 2 a.m. when she received a call from Marcus Blackwell, the same man who now sheltered her. His voice was calm, deliberate. I've reviewed your proposal, Mrs. Reed. You're the only reason I haven't pulled my investment. Emily froze. You know it's my work? Marcus replied. Of course. Daniel can charm a room, but you built the foundation. He doesn't even understand half the metrics he presents. That night, Marcus offered her a deal. A quiet bailout under one condition, that she retain veto power over layoffs. Protect your people, he said. They're loyal to you, not to him. Emily accepted. Within days, the company stabilized. But Daniel didn't know the true source of salvation. He believed Marcus backed him, not her. And she never corrected him, because love, she thought, meant letting your partner shine. When the press later credited Daniel for brilliant crisis management, he accepted the praise with a grin. Emily sat beside him, smiling politely, while photographers captured their power couple pose. She remembered whispering, You should thank Marcus. Daniel replied, He invested in me. Don't ruin the image. But there was more to that night. Marcus called. In a hidden folder on her laptop, Emily had kept an old email, a message from Marcus sent at 3:12 a.m., the one that saved the company. It read, You have 48 hours. Use the attached plan. Present it as your husband's idea if you must, but remember, someday, truth finds light. Now sitting in Marcus's penthouse 11 months later, Emily reread that message, the words glowing on her screen. She looked up at Marcus, standing by the window, backlit by the city. You knew I'd need this someday, she whispered. Marcus nodded slightly. I didn't know when. I just knew men like Daniel don't stop taking until someone makes them. Emily felt tears prick her eyes. Why didn't you tell me back then? I wanted to see if you'd fight for him or for yourself, Marcus said. Now I know the answer. Her mind replayed that crisis week. Daniel screaming at engineers, accusing them of sabotage. She remembered begging him not to fire people right before Christmas. He'd said, You care too much about the help, Em. This is business, not charity. She remembered standing by the office window, watching snow fall over Midtown, whispering to her unborn child, He'll calm down, he's just scared. But he never calmed down. He just learned to hide his cruelty behind charm. Now she understood. Everything she'd built, every sleepless night, every contract, had been signed over to a man who would sell her soul for a headline. She turned to Marcus, her voice steady for the first time. You once told me truth finds light. I think it's time. He met her gaze. Then we expose him. On your terms. Emily closed her laptop, heart racing. Outside, the city pulsed with life, unaware that a corporate earthquake was about to hit. Daniel Reed thought he'd buried the past, but the woman he betrayed was about to resurrect it, and use it to destroy him. The truth that saved his company will now end his career. Winter had settled hard over New York. The city glowed under frost, but inside Reed Technologies' glass tower, the air was colder. Emily sat at her desk long after midnight, her eyes blurry from spreadsheets and investor emails. The hum of servers was the only sound. She rubbed her swollen belly, whispering, "Just a few more weeks, babies, then I'll rest." She had promised her doctor she'd stay calm, but Daniel's voice still echoed from their last argument. "You can't vanish now, Emily," he'd said. "You're the face investors trust. You owe this company your loyalty." Loyalty. That word had become a leash. Her phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. "Need the pitch deck by 7 a.m. Don't embarrass me again. Ava's reviewing your notes." Her stomach twisted. Ava, the new PR visionary. The woman now sitting in meetings Emily once led. She opened the presentation on her MacBook Pro, scrolling through slides filled with promises she didn't believe anymore. Daniel had been exaggerating numbers again. Optimistic projections, he called them. But Emily knew it was fraud dressed as ambition. As she edited quietly, a sharp pain shot through her side. She gasped, gripping the edge of the desk. Her vision blurred, the pain spreading through her abdomen. She tried to breathe. Another contraction hit, too early, too strong. She stumbled to the bathroom, cold sweat beading on her forehead. Her reflection in the mirror frightened her. Pale, trembling, the glow of the monitor flickering behind her like a ghost. "Not now," she whispered, clutching the counter. When she returned to her desk, her phone buzzed again. Daniel's name flashed. She answered, breathless. "Daniel, I think I need to." "Not now," he cut her off. "I'm at dinner with Marcus. Don't ruin this with drama. You know how sensitive investors are." "Daniel, please." He hung up. Emily sank to the floor, shaking. Tears slid down her cheeks as she whispered to the twins, "I'm so sorry. Mommy's trying." Hours later, she finished the presentation, sent it to Daniel, and collapsed onto the couch. Her phone buzzed again. A single text. "Looks decent. Ava fixed your numbers." Something inside her broke. By morning, she woke to find blood on the couch cushion. Panic seized her chest. She tried to stand, but her knees gave out. The room spun. She crawled toward her phone, fingers slipping. She managed to press call. The voice that answered wasn't Daniel's. "Mrs. Reed? This is Marcus Blackwell. Your assistant called me, said you haven't left the office in 2 days. Are you all right?" She tried to speak, but only a sob came out. "The babies? Something's wrong." "Stay where you are," Marcus said sharply. "I'm sending help." 20 minutes later, paramedics burst through the office door. Marcus arrived moments after them, still in his overcoat, snow melting on his shoulders. He knelt beside her, taking her trembling hand. "You shouldn't have to fight this alone," he said softly. When Emily woke in the hospital, one baby was gone. The other heartbeat flickered faintly on the monitor. She turned her head and saw Marcus sitting quietly in the corner, watching over her. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His presence said everything Daniel's promises never had, that she was seen, valued, protected. Emily closed her eyes, tears slipping down her temples. Somewhere deep inside, grief burned, but beneath it, a tiny ember of resolve began to glow. Her husband saw her as a liability. Marcus saw her as the key. And that night, as the city slept, a woman broken by love began to rebuild herself with vengeance. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and silence. Emily lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, the rhythm of the monitor steady beside her. Outside, snow pressed against the window, soft but relentless. The doctor had said she could go home in 2 days, if she avoided stress. But stress was all she had left. That night, Daniel finally appeared. He walked into her room wearing his designer coat and that same smooth smile he used for cameras. He carried a bouquet of white roses, expensive, perfect, meaningless. "Emily," he said softly, as if nothing had happened. "You look better." She turned her face away. "You waited 3 days?" He sighed dramatically. "You know how hard things have been. The press, the investors, they're all watching me. I couldn't just vanish." Emily laughed bitterly. "You mean you couldn't risk being seen leaving the plaza with your mistress?" Daniel's eyes flashed, then softened again. "Ava means nothing, Emily. She's a prop. You know how PR works." A prop. The word hung in the air like poison. He sat beside her bed, taking her hand carefully, as if she were made of glass. "Listen," he said, lowering his voice. "Once this storm passes, I'll buy that house in the Hamptons you wanted. Big backyard, Ocean air. We'll start over, I promise. Emily stared at him, her heart aching between anger and longing. For a moment, just a moment, she wanted to believe him. The way his voice softened, the way he spoke of family. She imagined the ocean, the twins, peace. But then she remembered the couch soaked in blood, the baby that didn't make it, the unanswered calls. Her voice trembled. You left me to die, Daniel. He froze. Don't be dramatic. Dramatic, she whispered. One of our babies is gone, and you were having champagne. He stood up sharply. You're not the only one who's lost something. You think I wanted this? I have a company to protect. You of all people should understand that. The monitor beside her began to beat faster. Emily turned away, pressing her palm against her stomach. Please go. But Daniel wasn't done. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. I'm trying to fix things. For us. If you love me, you'll stay quiet until the media forgets. Sign the papers, and I'll take care of everything. You'll be safe. Emily's tears finally spilled. Safe? You forged my name on contracts? You turned me into a criminal on paper. Daniel's face hardened. You're emotional. Don't make this worse than it is. He bent down, kissed her forehead, and whispered, You'll thank me someday. When he left, the door clicked softly, like the sound of something breaking. Emily sat in the darkness, her body trembling. Then she reached for her phone. The screen glowed with a single recording app, open since he walked in. She had captured every word. She saved the file under the name The Last Lie. Minutes later, her phone buzzed again. A new message from Marcus. If he came, record everything. Truth is your weapon now. Emily stared at the screen, stunned. She hadn't told Marcus Daniel would visit. How did he know? Maybe because he'd seen this pattern before. Power, manipulation, the same script Daniel used on everyone. She placed her hand on her belly. One heartbeat still pulsed under her palm. We'll be okay, she whispered. Outside, the snow had stopped. The city lights shimmered against the window like scattered stars. For the first time, Emily didn't cry when Daniel left. She smiled, cold, quiet, unbroken. That night, love finally died, and justice began to breathe. Snow drifted lazily over Park Avenue when the car stopped in front of Marcus Blackwell's penthouse. Emily stepped out slowly, one hand on her belly, the other clutching her small leather bag. She looked up. The glass tower reached into the clouds, its lights reflecting across the city like fire. This wasn't just shelter, it was another world. Marcus met her at the entrance, holding the door open. Welcome home, Emily, he said simply. The penthouse was quiet, filled with warm light from the fireplace. Large windows framed the Manhattan skyline, 1,000 lives glittering beneath them. The air smelled faintly of cedar and espresso. There was no chaos here, no lies, no cameras. For the first time in months, she felt her lungs open. Marcus led her to the living room. On the marble coffee table sat a silver tray with tea, a soft blanket, and an envelope stamped with the Reed Technologies logo. She froze. Why is that here? Marcus took a seat across from her. Because I thought you'd want to see what he's doing. Inside the envelope was a corporate memo. Official statement, Daniel Reed to lead next-gen expansion, new VP Ava Monroe to join board of directors. Emily stared at the page, her pulse racing. He's putting her on the board? Marcus nodded. He's trying to secure sympathy votes from investors who like a romantic storyline. But that's not what matters. He handed her another folder. Thick, that stamped confidential. These are your husband's offshore accounts. Transfers, falsified reports, everything he's been hiding. She looked up sharply. How did you? Because I funded half of it, Marcus interrupted, his tone calm but edged with quiet fury. I wanted to see if Daniel would cross the line. He did. Emily's throat tightened. Why help me now? Marcus leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Because you saved my money when no one else would have. You rebuilt that company during the crisis last year. I watched you hold it together while he played God. He paused, eyes softening. You're not a victim, Emily. You're the real architect of Reed Technologies. Silence filled the room, heavy but healing. Emily finally exhaled, tears slipping quietly down her cheeks. I don't know how to fight him, Marcus. He has everything. Money, power, lawyers. Marcus smiled faintly. Then we don't fight him on his battlefield, we build our own. He slid a Mont Blanc pen toward her. Sign this. It's a temporary trust under my protection. All your shares, your patents, your intellectual property will move here. Daniel can't touch it. Emily hesitated. Why are you doing this for me? Marcus looked out the window, his voice low. Because I lost someone once, a woman who believed the wrong man's lies. I promised myself I'd never watch it happen again. She signed slowly, hand trembling. When she looked up, Marcus was still watching her, eyes steady and kind. I'll rebuild everything, she whispered. But this time, in my name. Marcus nodded. That's the spirit. As she sipped her tea, a soft kick moved beneath her palm. The baby, the one who survived, was alive, strong. Emily smiled faintly. You and me, little one, no more tears. Outside, snowflakes gathered on the window like ashes reborn into light. Across the city, Daniel Reed laughed at another investor dinner, blissfully unaware that the woman he discarded was now sitting in a Park Avenue penthouse, armed with his secrets, protected by a billionaire and ready to rise. The empire he built on lies now belonged to the woman he betrayed. Monday morning in Manhattan started like every other. Espresso machines humming, taxis honking, and headlines chasing stories. But for Daniel Reed, it began with chaos. At 7:15 a.m., his phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Dozens of notifications, emails from board members, legal advisors, and publicists, all marked urgent. He slammed his coffee cup down on the marble counter of his penthouse kitchen, snapping, "What the hell happened overnight?" Ava Monroe stepped out of the bedroom wearing his shirt, scrolling through her iPad. "Daniel," she said softly, "Marcus Blackwell unfollowed the company's page, publicly." Daniel blinked. Unfollowed? He's a billionaire, not a teenager. But then his assistant called. "Sir, Mr. Blackwell just withdrew his commitment from the expansion project. $60 million gone." Daniel's face drained of color. "That's impossible. He can't. He wouldn't." "He did," the assistant said, "and he's not returning calls." Daniel grabbed his keys, storming toward the elevator. "Get me a meeting with Marcus now." Across the city in Marcus's Park Avenue penthouse, Emily sat beside a large window, sunlight pouring across the table. Her laptop was open, documents spread out before her, transfer records, falsified data, every lie Daniel had built his empire on. Marcus stood behind her, reading silently. "He'll notice you're gone from the system today," Marcus said. Emily sipped her tea. "Good. Let him feel what silence tastes like." At Reed Technologies headquarters, Daniel marched into the boardroom, shouting orders. "Get Marcus on the line. He can't pull funding without notice." The CFO, pale and nervous, replied, "He didn't just pull funding, he transferred his shares." Daniel froze. "To who?" The CFO swallowed hard. "A new entity, Carter Legacy Holdings." For a second, Daniel thought he misheard. Carter, Emily's maiden name. He slammed his fist on the table. "She's behind this," one board member whispered. "She was the co-founder. Maybe she's claiming what's hers." Daniel's voice roared. "What's hers? I built this company." But deep down, a small voice whispered the truth. "She built it, and you took the credit." By noon, financial blogs were buzzing. Billionaire Marcus Blackwell withdraws from Reed Technologies. Stock prices began to drop. Daniel's phone rang non-stop. Investors demanding explanations, journalists requesting interviews, rumors flying about corporate restructuring. He called Emily 10 times, straight to voicemail. Ava tried to calm him. "Daniel, maybe if you just apologize." He cut her off sharply. "You think I'm losing to her? She's just a pregnant housewife who doesn't understand business." But his words rang hollow, even to himself. Later that evening, Daniel finally showed up at Marcus's building. The doorman hesitated, then called upstairs. Marcus looked at Emily. "Do you want me to let him in?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, I want to see his face." When Daniel stepped into the penthouse, the first thing he saw was Emily. Calm, collected, beautiful in a simple white sweater. Her hand rested gently on her stomach. He sneered. "So this is where you've been hiding? With him?" Marcus didn't move. "She's not hiding. She's recovering." Daniel turned back to Emily. "What did you tell him? You're destroying everything we built." Emily met his rage with steady eyes. "You destroyed it yourself, Daniel. I just stopped cleaning up the mess." He stepped closer, jaw clenched. "You think you can survive without me?" Emily didn't flinch. "I already am." For a moment, silence hung heavy in the air. The man who once controlled her entire life now stood powerless before her, and he knew it. Marcus broke the silence. "You should leave now, Daniel, before the world learns what you've done." Daniel glared at both of them, his pride cracking like glass. "You'll regret this." Emily smiled faintly. "I already did, once." As he stormed out, his phone buzzed again, Another headline alert. Reed Technologies stock crashes amid investor exodus. He stared at the screen, his reflection fractured in the glass. For the first time in years, Daniel Reed wasn't the man in control. And for the first time, Emily Carter was. For a few glittering weeks, Ava Monroe believed she had everything she'd ever wanted. Daniel's name opened doors on Fifth Avenue. Her face was splashed across gossip blogs beside headlines like "Power Couple of Tech's New Era." She spent afternoons shopping at Cartier and sipping champagne at the plaza, convincing herself she had traded her past for perfection. But beneath the diamond light of her new world, cracks were forming. It began with the silence, the way Daniel stopped answering her texts during meetings. His charm had turned sharp, mechanical. When she asked, "Are you okay?" he replied coldly, "Don't question me in public." One morning, Ava woke in his penthouse alone. On the kitchen counter, a single note. "Be at the investor brunch. Don't say anything about the merger until I cue you." She looked around at the marble counters, the crystal glasses, the empty bottle of Dom Perignon from the night before, the same brand Daniel had once shared with Emily. For the first time, the luxury felt like a cage. At the brunch, photographers swarmed them as they entered. Daniel played his part perfectly. The charming CEO, smiling, shaking hands, introducing Ava as our brand's modern voice. She smiled too, but her palms were slick with sweat. Across the table, a journalist whispered, "That's his mistress, right? The one he promoted?" Another replied, "Yeah, but he hasn't divorced the wife yet." The word wife stabbed through the air like glass. Ava tried to laugh it off, but Daniel's jaw tightened. He noticed the stares, the murmurs. For the first time, the room wasn't on his side. Later, in the car, she said, "You should finalize your divorce. People are talking." Daniel turned his head slowly, his eyes cold. "Do not tell me what to do." "But you said." "I said be patient." His tone sliced through her. "You think this is love? This is business." The words landed like a slap. That night she drank alone on the balcony, watching snow fall over the Manhattan skyline. Her phone buzzed. An email from a blocked address. Subject line, "You're not the only one he lied to." Attached was a recording. Daniel's voice, cold and cruel. "Ava's just a distraction. She'll keep the press busy while I clean up the mess." Her glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the concrete. The next morning she stormed into Daniel's office, slamming the door. "What is this?" she demanded, tossing her phone onto his desk. He barely looked up from his laptop. "You shouldn't believe everything you hear. Was any of it real?" she whispered. Daniel stood, stepping close enough for her to smell his cologne. "You got what you wanted. Power, attention, a last name people finally recognize. Don't ruin it by growing a conscience." Her throat tightened. "You're destroying yourself, Daniel." He laughed bitterly. "You think you can save me? You're replaceable." That word, replaceable, cracked something inside her. When she left the office, tears streaked her makeup, but her mind was sharp. She opened her phone, scrolling to a hidden folder of voice memos. Daniel had never realized she'd been recording their conversations, every illegal instruction, every forged signature he dictated to her. As she stared at the files, her reflection glimmered in the screen. Half victim, half avenger. That night, Ava packed her bags and left Daniel's penthouse for a quiet hotel downtown. She poured herself a drink, replayed the recording of him mocking her, and whispered, "Let's see who's replaceable now." Outside, the first winter storm of the year swept through the city, blurring the skyline. Ava Monroe finally understood what Emily Carter had learned long before her, that love built on lies always burns, and every fire leaves ashes that remember your name. And this time, those ashes were coming for Daniel Reed. The city outside Marcus's penthouse glowed in the dim winter dusk. Inside, the lights were low, the air thick with silence. Emily sat curled on the sofa, wrapped in a cream blanket. Her fingers traced the edge of a teacup, but she hadn't taken a sip. Her thoughts were loud enough to drown everything else. Marcus stood by the window, phone in hand, watching the Manhattan skyline blur through the snow. "He's spinning the story again," he said quietly. "Daniel told the press you've had a breakdown. He's using your hospital stay as proof." Emily's breath caught. "He said that?" Marcus nodded, his jaw tense. "He's playing the sympathy card. Poor husband, pregnant wife, mentally unstable after tragedy. It's textbook damage control." For a moment, Emily didn't respond. Her gaze stayed fixed on the skyline, cold, glittering, merciless. Then she laughed, a hollow sound that broke halfway through. So I'm crazy now? Convenient. Marcus turned toward her. You don't have to watch him destroy you quietly. Her voice trembled. Marcus, you don't understand. I've lived with him for 7 years. He doesn't stop until you're broken. And even then, he steps on the pieces. Marcus came closer, sitting across from her. Then let's stop him. Emily's eyes filled, but not from fear. You think I haven't tried? I begged him to stop the lying. I told him the numbers didn't add up, that we were headed for a crash. You know what he said? Marcus waited. He said, You're just emotional, Em. You don't understand scale. Her voice cracked on the word emotional. She clenched her hands, nails digging into her palms. I was emotional when I sold my ring to pay his employees. I was emotional when I hid his mistakes from the board. I was emotional when I buried one of our children alone. Tears streamed freely now, but her tone hardened. And he still thinks I'm weak. Marcus reached for a tissue, but she shook her head. Don't. Let me say it all or I'll never breathe again. He nodded quietly. Emily continued, voice raw. That night in the hospital when he said we'd start over, I believed him for 5 minutes. 5 stupid minutes. I thought maybe grief changed him. She pressed a trembling hand to her heart. Then I remembered he wasn't crying for our baby. He was crying because he lost his brand. Marcus's expression darkened, the faint reflection of the city flickering in his eyes. He'll regret every word. Emily looked up at him, her tears finally slowing. I don't want revenge for the sake of revenge. I just want him to feel what it's like, to wake up and realize the world doesn't belong to him anymore. Marcus leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Then we'll give him that moment. He opened his briefcase and slid a flash drive across the table. These are recordings from his office cameras. Watch them when you're ready. She frowned. What's on them? Proof that Daniel's lies go beyond you, fraud, bribery, everything the board doesn't know yet. Emily hesitated, then took the drive. Her reflection shimmered on its metallic surface. A woman she barely recognized. Marcus, she whispered, how do you stay so calm when everything hurts? He looked at her, his voice gentle. Because I've already lost everything once. The only thing left to fear is watching it happen to someone else. Something shifted in her chest. Not love, not yet, but recognition. The shared language of survivors. She placed the flash drive beside her tea and exhaled. Then let's begin. Outside, thunder rumbled across the skyline. The storm had arrived, and this time it was hers. Her tears had finally turned into weapons. It was nearly midnight when Emily opened her laptop again. The penthouse was quiet, except for the sound of rain against the glass. Marcus had gone to take a call in the study, leaving her alone with her thoughts. And the flash drive. It sat beside her like a loaded weapon, waiting for her to pull the trigger. Her hands trembled as she plugged it in. The screen came alive, playing grainy security footage from Reed Technologies. Daniel's office, sleek, sterile, and cold, filled the monitor. She fast-forwarded through hours of silence until one clip stopped her. Daniel and Ava were standing over a stack of documents. Daniel's voice was low but sharp. We'll reroute the payments through the Cayman account. Use Emily's old signature. No one checks the spouse files. Ava hesitated. That's illegal. Daniel smirked. So is most of Wall Street. Welcome to the big leagues. Emily froze, bile rising in her throat. She replayed it 3 times, each word slicing deeper. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was criminal. Marcus re-entered, his tie loosened. You watched it. She nodded silently, eyes red but dry. He used my name to cover fraud. Marcus took a seat beside her. Then we move fast. We'll shift every asset under your name into a protected trust. I've already spoken with my lawyers. He opened his tablet and turned it toward her. A document labeled the Carter Legacy Trust. Your shares, your intellectual property, your original patents, Marcus explained. Everything you created will now belong to your child. He can't touch it without exposing himself. Emily hesitated. That will ruin him. Marcus met her gaze. He ruined himself. You're just showing the world what he really is. She studied the skyline outside, lightning flashing between the buildings. For the first time, she wasn't afraid. All right, she whispered. Do it. By dawn, the paperwork was complete. Emily signed every page, her signature steady. Marcus watched her in silence, a faint respect in his eyes. Most people cry before war, he said quietly. You get calmer. I've already cried enough, she replied. Later that day, Marcus's legal team began the transfer. The process was discreet, protected, invisible to Daniel's accountants. By the time the markets opened, 28% of Reed Technologies had silently shifted to Carter Legacy Holdings. Across town, Daniel entered his office, coffee in hand, smiling to himself. The night before, he had charmed 2 new investors at a dinner, assuring them the company's future was secure. He had no idea the future was already gone. At 10 a.m., his CFO burst into the room. Sir, we've got a situation, Daniel frowned. What now? Someone just filed a trust claim over your patents. The ownership trail leads back to your wife. Daniel blinked. That's impossible. She's not even working. The CFO hesitated. Sir, the lawyers say the paperwork is legitimate, notarized, time-stamped, backed by Blackwell Holdings. Daniel's face went white. Marcus, he hissed. He's behind this. He grabbed his phone, calling Emily. Straight to voicemail. Then Marcus. No answer. Meanwhile, in the penthouse, Emily sat quietly on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket. The rain had stopped, leaving the air clean and sharp. Her phone buzzed with missed calls, but she ignored them all. Marcus stepped outside, handing her a cup of coffee. You did it. She nodded, eyes on the sunrise breaking over the city. No, she said softly. I just stopped pretending to be powerless. He smiled faintly. Then this is only the beginning. Across Manhattan, Daniel Reed watched helplessly as his company's stock froze, was in confusion. Transactions pending, lawyers calling, chaos brewing. For the first time, he was the one chasing answers. And the war he thought he'd already won had just started without him. The morning after the stock froze, Manhattan buzzed with speculation. Reed Technologies in turmoil, the headlines screamed. Every news outlet wanted a statement from Daniel Reed, but for the first time, the CEO had no script to hide behind. By noon, Daniel had reached his breaking point. His reflection in the glass walls of his midtown office didn't look like power anymore. It looked like panic. Sweat glistened on his temples as he shouted into his phone. Find her! I don't care how! Just find Emily! When his assistant stammered, Sir, she's at Park Avenue, with Marcus Blackwell, Daniel froze. The sound of that name ignited something feral inside him. He grabbed his keys and stormed out. Outside, snow was falling again, soft, indifferent, beautiful. But inside Daniel's chest, everything was fire. He drove fast through the streets, ignoring red lights, every nerve pulsing with betrayal and disbelief. 20 minutes later, he stood in front of Marcus's building, rage radiating off him. The doorman hesitated. Sir? Mrs. Reed asked not to be disturbed. Daniel pushed past him, jamming the elevator button. She's my wife, he snapped. When the elevator doors opened to the penthouse, the world slowed. Emily was sitting by the window, her belly round beneath a cream sweater, sunlight spilling across her face. She looked calm, too calm. Marcus stood behind her, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. Daniel, she said quietly, not surprised. He laughed bitterly. So it's true, you and him, you've been planning this the whole time. Emily turned her gaze toward him, steady, unflinching. No, Daniel, you've been planning this since the day you decided I was in your way. Daniel's voice rose. You think you can destroy me? You wouldn't even have a life if it weren't for me. Her expression didn't change. And you wouldn't have a company if it weren't for me. He took a step closer, face red. You're trying to humiliate me. Do you have any idea what this will cost? She stood slowly, one hand resting on her stomach. Everything. It'll cost you everything, Daniel, just like it cost me. Marcus stepped forward slightly. That's enough. Daniel turned on him, fury boiling over. You think you can steal my wife? My company? Marcus cut him off, voice calm but edged with steel. No one stole anything from you. You threw it away. Daniel's hands trembled. You're making a mistake, Emily. I can fix this. We can still... Emily's laugh was soft, almost pitying. Fix this? You forged my name. You made me a criminal on paper. You let our child die while you drank champagne with another woman. Tell me, Daniel, how do you fix that? For the first time, he had no words. The man who could sell lies with a smile couldn't speak. His lips parted, but nothing came out. Emily took a deep breath. You once told me silence makes a woman weak, but silence is what's going to bury you. Daniel's jaw clenched, eyes darting toward Marcus. You think he cares about you? He's using you to ruin me. Emily shook her head. No, Marcus doesn't want to ruin you. I do. Marcus watched her quietly, a flicker of admiration in his eyes. Daniel's phone buzzed, another alert. He glanced at the screen. SEG launches investigation into Reed Technologies' offshore accounts. His hands shook. What did you do? Emily turned toward the window, sunlight haloing her silhouette. I told the truth. Daniel stumbled backward, realizing too late that the empire he'd built on deceit was now crumbling, brick by brick, under her quiet vengeance. As he left, the elevator doors closed between them with a metallic hiss, the sound of finality. Emily exhaled, her body trembling, not from fear but release. Marcus handed her a glass of water. She whispered, I didn't raise my voice once. He smiled softly. That's how real power sounds. The man who once owned everything had finally lost to the woman he underestimated. The next morning, the 32nd floor of Reed Technologies was silent, except for the buzz of nervous whispers. The air felt heavy, like the moments before a storm. Executives in tailored suits shuffled into the glass conference room, avoiding Daniel Reed's eyes. Every seat was filled, every face tense. Daniel entered last, his smile stretched thin. Let's make this quick, he said, setting his phone on the table. We've weathered bad press before. This will pass. But the CFO didn't smile. Neither did the head of legal. A large monitor flickered on, displaying a frozen image from a leaked video. Daniel's voice echoed from the speakers. We'll reroute the payments through the Cayman account. Use Emily's old signature. The room went dead silent. Daniel's pulse spiked. Where did that come from? The legal counsel replied coldly. It surfaced online this morning. Every major network is requesting comment. The SEC has already contacted our office. Daniel forced a laugh. That's ridiculous. That audio could be edited. The CFO folded his hands. It's not. We verified it, and the metadata shows it was recorded from your office. The walls seemed to close in. Daniel's throat tightened. Someone's setting me up. Probably Marcus Blackwell. He's been after my seat since day one. The head of PR slid a tablet across the table. Marcus isn't the only problem. Half our investors have frozen funding. The rest are demanding an emergency vote on leadership. Daniel's composure snapped. You're not voting on anything. He slammed his palm on the table. This is my company. But no one looked at him. Their eyes flicked toward the glass door, where two federal agents stood waiting with badges visible. The murmurs spread like wildfire. Mr. Reed, one of the agents said calmly, we need to speak with you regarding ongoing investigations into securities fraud and document forgery. Daniel's voice cracked. You can't just barge in here. The board chair interrupted, his tone clipped. Daniel, please, step outside with them. Daniel turned to the group, scanning faces he'd once commanded with fear and charm. No one met his eyes. Even Ava, sitting at the far end of the table, looked down at her tablet, tears glistening silently. Are you all seriously doing this? Daniel said hoarsely. After everything I built? The chair's voice was calm but final. No, Daniel, after everything she built. The words hit harder than any headline could. Daniel laughed bitterly, shaking his head. Emily, of course. He looked toward Ava. Did you help her too? Ava lifted her gaze, hollow, exhausted. You helped yourself, Daniel. Right off a cliff. The agent stepped closer. Mr. Reed? Daniel stared out the panoramic window one last time. The skyline glimmered, the same view he'd once bragged about, the same city he thought he owned. Now it stared back like a jury. As the agents led him out, the elevator doors closed with a soft ding, the sound of final judgment. Back inside, silence lingered until the board chair spoke again. Effective immediately, Daniel Reed is suspended as CEO pending investigation. A collective exhale rippled through the room. Ava covered her mouth, trembling. Meanwhile, across Park Avenue, Emily watched the live stream of the board meeting on her iPad. She sat quietly, a blanket draped over her knees, Marcus beside her. It's over, Marcus said softly. Emily shook her head. No, Marcus. It's beginning. She turned the screen off, closing the device with deliberate calm. He thought I was weak. He thought tears meant surrender. Marcus looked at her, the faintest smile forming. Turns out tears are excellent camouflage. Emily leaned back, one hand resting on her belly. He took everything from me, but I took his voice. And now, the world finally hears the truth. Outside, sirens wailed faintly in the distance, not for her, but for him. The empire Daniel Reed built on lies had collapsed in the very boardroom he once ruled. The city felt different that morning. The air was softer, quieter, as if Manhattan itself had paused to exhale. The headlines had already exploded across every screen. Daniel Reed suspended pending federal investigation. His face was everywhere, a fallen CEO in an Armani suit, eyes hollow, jaw clenched. But Emily didn't watch the news. She sat in the sunroom of Marcus's penthouse, wrapped in a cream shawl, a steaming cup of herbal tea resting on the marble table. The soft hum of the city below sounded almost peaceful. Her iPhone buzzed with messages, journalists begging for interviews, networks offering six-figure deals for exclusives, podcasts asking for her side of the story. Marcus entered, holding 2 coffees. "You're trending again," he said, setting them down. Emily gave a tired smile. "For the first time, I don't want to read what they say." "You could tell them everything," Marcus said gently. "The lies, the forged contracts, how you lost one of the twins because of him. You could bury him for good." Emily looked out the window, the skyline shimmering in the morning light. "I already buried him, Marcus. Just not the way the world expects." Marcus tilted his head. "You're walking away." "I'm choosing peace," she replied. "He took years of my life. I won't give him my peace too." She set her cup down and exhaled slowly. "You know what I realized in that hospital? Power isn't yelling the truth louder. It's knowing the truth and not needing to scream it." Marcus smiled faintly. "You sound like someone who's read the 48 Laws of Power." Emily laughed softly. "Maybe I learned my own version." Her phone buzzed again. She ignored it. But a few minutes later, a familiar number flashed on the screen. Daniel Reed. She froze. Marcus noticed. "You don't owe him anything." Emily nodded, staring at the glowing screen. The phone kept ringing, the sound echoing through the quiet room. She reached for it, then flipped it face down on the table. "I'm done answering." Marcus's gaze softened. "That's strength." Her eyes filled briefly, but she blinked the tears away. "It doesn't feel like strength. It feels like grief that's finally tired." They sat in silence for a while, watching the city below. Taxis gliding through puddles, life going on. After a few minutes, Marcus said quietly, "You know, I once thought revenge was the only justice worth chasing, but I was wrong. What you're doing, that's real power." Emily smiled faintly. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just learning how to breathe again." Her phone buzzed one last time. This time, it wasn't Daniel. It was a news alert. Federal agents seize Reed Technologies records. Daniel Reed's assets frozen. She read it once, then set the phone aside. "There's the justice part," she said simply. Marcus chuckled softly. "And you didn't lift a finger." Emily looked up at him. "Sometimes the truth doesn't need a warrior. It just needs time." The baby kicked, a gentle reminder beneath her ribs. She smiled, resting a hand on her belly. "I want my child to know peace, not pain. I want them to grow up knowing their mother didn't destroy. She rebuilt." Marcus studied her quietly. "And when you rebuild, Emily, I hope you'll let someone stand beside you." Her eyes met his, calm and full of something new, something fragile but alive. "Maybe I already have." Outside, the sky began to clear. The storm had passed. Emily closed her eyes, letting the sunlight touch her face. She had no press statement, no revenge speech, no dramatic ending, just the sound of her heartbeat and the whisper of peace filling the space Daniel once occupied. In the end, she didn't need to destroy him. His silence was her justice, and her peace was his punishment. The courtroom smelled of old wood and stale perfume. Cameras flashed as Daniel Reed, once the untouchable tech genius of Manhattan, was escorted in wearing a navy prison suit instead of his usual tailored Armani. His hair had grown uneven, his wrists cuffed in front of him. The man who once spoke to rooms filled with investors now faced a crowd that only wanted to see him fall. The judge's voice echoed sharply. "Daniel Reed, you stand accused of corporate fraud, forgery, and obstruction of justice. Do you have anything to say before sentencing?" Daniel rose, his voice low but steady. "Everything I did was for my company, for the people who depended on me." His eyes darted toward the gallery, scanning for one face, Emily's. But her seat was empty. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed as the verdict hit the air. Daniel Reed, guilty on all counts, sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. That night, in a cold cell, Daniel stared at the concrete wall, replaying the past like a film he couldn't stop watching. Every scene ended the same, Emily turning away. He picked up a dull pencil and began to write. "If the world won't hear my truth, I'll make them read it." Weeks later, a handwritten letter appeared in the mailbox of a major financial magazine. The editor unfolded it, recognizing the name immediately: Daniel Reed. Inside, Daniel's words dripped with bitterness. My wife and the billionaire investor conspired to destroy my company and frame me. The woman I built my life around betrayed me for power. She wasn't my victim, she was my executioner. He signed it with a flourish, sealing it as though it were his redemption. 2 days later, the letter went viral. News anchors debated its tone. Some painted him as delusional, others as a man broken by betrayal. But the story gave him what he craved most: attention. At the Park Avenue penthouse, Marcus laid the magazine on the table. "He's trying to rewrite history," he said quietly. Emily looked at the article, her face unreadable. "He still doesn't understand. It was never about revenge." Marcus nodded. "Do you want to respond?" "No," she said softly. "Let him talk. Truth doesn't need to shout anymore." But the letter had consequences. The FBI reopened certain documents, cross-checking dates and transactions, and in doing so, they uncovered something Daniel hadn't expected: a separate offshore account registered in his father's name that tied directly back to him. It wasn't just fraud now, it was laundering. When agents confronted him, Daniel's arrogance cracked. "That's not mine," he barked, but the evidence was irrefutable. The new charges extended his sentence from 12 to 25 years. The day he learned the news, he threw the magazine against the wall, pages scattering like broken dreams. In a fit of rage, he punched the concrete, splitting his knuckles. "She did this," he whispered to the empty cell. "She always wins." But outside those walls, Emily wasn't celebrating. She was in a quiet nursery, painting a wall the color of dawn, soft yellow, the shade of rebirth. Her belly had softened, her face gentler now, peace replacing exhaustion. Marcus entered, carrying a box of baby clothes. "He wrote again," Marcus said, holding an envelope. Emily smiled faintly. "Let him write. It's the only thing he can control now." She dipped her brush again, painting a small sun in the corner of the wall. "People like Daniel spend their lives chasing control," she said softly. "But control isn't power. Letting go is." Marcus watched her, pride flickering behind his calm. Outside, the city lights shimmered against the window. Somewhere far away, Daniel sat alone in his cell, clutching his final letter, still trying to win a war that had already ended. And while he rotted in silence, the woman he tried to destroy was finally learning how to live. A year had passed since Daniel Reed's name became a headline for ruin. His empire had been dismantled, his assets seized, and his reputation reduced to ash. The world had moved on. Except Emily Carter. She hadn't chased fame or revenge. She had quietly rebuilt. Now, she stood in front of the mirror inside the Plaza Hotel, the same place where Daniel once flaunted his betrayal. But this time, she wasn't the trembling wife watching from the crowd. She was the bride. The ivory gown hugged her gently, elegant but strong, much like the woman she'd become. Her hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders, and a faint smile curved her lips. On her wrist, a delicate Cartier bracelet glimmered, a gift from Marcus. Marcus Blackwell waited downstairs in the ballroom, surrounded by New York's elite: CEOs, investors, philanthropists, and the press. But there was no chaos, no scandal, only quiet awe. Everyone knew who she was now. The woman who survived betrayal and built an empire of her own. As the music began, Emily took a deep breath. Her reflection in the mirror whispered back the truth she'd fought to earn. "You are not his shadow anymore." She walked down the grand staircase, each step slow, deliberate. The crowd fell silent. Even the chandeliers seemed to hold their breath. Marcus turned, his expression softening the moment he saw her. When she reached him, he took her hands and whispered, "You're breathtaking." Emily smiled. "So are you, for a man who hates attention." The audience chuckled gently. It wasn't just a wedding, it was redemption personified. During the ceremony, the officiant spoke of second chances and rebirth. "Love," he said, "is not about possession. It's about seeing someone as they are and choosing them every day with honesty." Emily's eyes glistened. She thought of Daniel, not with pain anymore, but with closure. Every lie he told had brought her here, to the truth standing beside her. When the officiant said, "You may now kiss the bride," Marcus hesitated, whispering, "Are you sure?" Emily smiled. "I've never been sure of anything." Applause filled the ballroom as their lips met, not like a fairy tale, but like two souls who had finally earned peace. Afterward, the guests gathered for the reception. Crystal glasses clinked, laughter filled the air, and the string quartet played softly. Emily stood near the window, looking out at the Manhattan skyline glittering under the night sky. Marcus approached, holding 2 glasses of champagne. "For us," he said. Emily raised hers gently. "For starting over." He smiled. "You realize what this means, don't you? The tabloids will lose their minds." She laughed quietly. "Let them. This time, they can write whatever they want. I'm not hiding anymore." Just then, the wedding planner handed her a white envelope. "This arrived for you, Mrs. Blackwell." Emily opened it. Inside was a small card. No signature, only 4 words written in careful ink. Heaven finally balanced the scales. Her breath caught. Attached was a single white rose, Ava Monroe's calling card. Emily smiled softly, slipping the note into her clutch. "Good," she whispered. "We all got what we needed." The orchestra swelled as she and Marcus stepped onto the dance floor. The guests watched as they moved gracefully beneath the chandeliers. A scene of power turned to grace, pain transformed into beauty. Marcus leaned close, whispering, "You're not just rebuilding, Emily. You're rewriting everything." She looked up at him, eyes glowing. "Maybe I'm just finally living." As the night drew on, the cameras captured what no headline could twist. The serenity in her smile, the certainty in his eyes. And somewhere far away, in a cold prison cell, Daniel Reed watched the broadcast on a flickering screen. His hand trembled as he reached out, touching her image, the woman who had once been his wife, now untouchable. The same hotel where he ruined her name had become the altar where she reclaimed it. Spring in Manhattan had a way of feeling like forgiveness. The snow that once blanketed the city was gone, replaced by blooming magnolias along Fifth Avenue. The world had moved on from Daniel Reed's scandal, but one name now filled the business headlines: Emily Carter Blackwell. 6 months after the wedding, Emily sat in the corner office of her new headquarters, Carter Innovations. The skyline stretched before her, sunlight glinting off the glass towers that once seemed untouchable. But now, she was one of them. The woman Daniel once erased from her own company had built a larger one, cleaner, stronger, untarnished. The morning meeting had just ended. Her assistant, Grace, lingered by the door. "Mrs. Blackwell, the Forbes team confirmed your feature for next month. They're calling it The Woman Who Rebuilt Wall Street." Emily smiled faintly. "Tell them to change the title." "I didn't rebuild Wall Street, I rebuilt myself." Grace grinned. "Yes, ma'am." When she left, Emily turned toward the window. The reflection staring back wasn't the timid wife she once was. She wore a cream suit, simple gold earrings, and confidence that didn't need to be announced. Her MacBook lay open beside a stack of legal files, acquisitions, partnerships, expansion plans. The Carter Legacy Trust had tripled in value. Just then, Marcus entered, holding 2 Starbucks cups. "You've officially beaten my Q1 numbers," he teased. Emily laughed softly. "Maybe you should have invested in Carter Innovations sooner." He placed a coffee beside her. "I did. I invested in you." They shared a quiet smile, the kind that carried history, scars, and peace all at once. Marcus sat across from her, his tone thoughtful. "Do you ever think about him?" Emily's smile faded into something gentler. "Sometimes, but not with anger. More like remembering a story I used to believe in." Marcus nodded. "He's still in prison. They denied his appeal last month." Emily's gaze drifted out the window. "Then justice did what I never had to." A moment passed before she said softly, "I used to dream about revenge. I thought it would heal me, but it didn't. Building this, my company, my family, my peace, that's what healed me." Marcus reached across the desk, covering her hand with his. "You didn't just survive, Emily. You transformed." Her eyes met his. "You helped me remember who I was before I became his wife. For that, I'll never stop being grateful." He smiled. "You don't owe me gratitude. Just keep proving that good people can still win." Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. A notification flashed. "Breaking news. Former CEO Daniel Reed hospitalized after prison altercation." Emily's fingers hovered over the screen but didn't open it. She simply turned the phone face down. Marcus studied her. "You're not going to read it?" She shook her head. "No. That part of my story ended long ago." He leaned back, admiration in his eyes. "Most people would celebrate." "I'm done celebrating pain," she said quietly. "I'm celebrating life." She stood, walking toward the glass wall that overlooked the city. The afternoon sun painted the skyline gold, the same color as her rebirth. "Do you know what I realized, Marcus?" she said softly. "You can't destroy a woman who's found peace in her own silence." He smiled. "Then what's next, Mrs. Blackwell?" She turned, her expression serene. "Legacy, not revenge, not redemption, just legacy." Below them, the streets of Manhattan pulsed with life. Billboards displayed Carter Innovation's new slogan, "Built from Truth." Emily exhaled, letting the sound of the city fill the room. For the first time in her life, everything was hers. Not borrowed, not stolen, not shared. And somewhere far away, in a dim prison cell, Daniel Reed lay awake, the faint sound of her name echoing from a radio broadcast. The woman he once silenced had become the empire he could never rebuild. So, that's how the story ends. You're still here, right? If you've made it this far, something about Emily's journey must have touched your heart. Maybe because it reflects a part of your own. Her story wasn't just about betrayal or revenge. It was about rediscovering peace after pain, and remembering that silence doesn't mean weakness. It means strength, mastered. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." That's what Emily learned. That peace isn't found by fighting others, but by rebuilding yourself. No one can take away your calm if you choose to protect it. So maybe this isn't just her story. Maybe it's yours too. Maybe you've lost something or someone or a version of yourself. And now, like Emily, you're learning that real healing begins when you stop chasing revenge and start creating your own legacy. If this story moved you even a little, if it made you breathe deeper, think softer, or believe again in second chances, then please like this video, share it with someone who needs strength tonight, and don't forget to subscribe. Because every week we tell stories that remind you, pain ends, but growth never does.